If we ever see the money.
And sorry I had to call and wake you up, but I said you gotta get here.
I hooked up my pump, started pumping my chemicals.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Hello. Okay. No, it's all right. You got it. Thank you all, everyone, for coming to the final legislative breakfast of the 2025 season here at the Eastside. Enjoy the wonderful breakfast that they put on this morning, and thanking them for the breakfast. It's sponsored by Spates Family LLC, which is also known as Doug Spates and Memphis Magog Rentals. He couldn't be here today, so unfortunately, you have to listen to me for a minute. Yes. Doug Spates is in Rotary with me and a lot of other people, and he's also joined the chamber and become the chamber president for Vermont's North Country Chamber of Commerce, and it's very exciting, giving his track record, for example, of the overlook over at Shattuck Hill that he accomplished there, now that that project's completed. And just a couple quick events of the chamber. The first Farmers Market Day, May 17th, we're going to have an open house at the Welcome Center. And then Saturday, July 21, a new event that's piggybacking on the Farmers Market is going to be a strawberry festival. And so we'd like to help to invite you all to that. And we're also looking for any business members who want to help participate or get involved in the chamber, or any individuals who'd like to volunteer at the Welcome Center. We'd like to have you all. Just let me know. And I thank you all for your time. And as Doug Spates would say, enjoy the breakfast. So now we will begin the legislative breakfast. Our first speaker will be Senator Russ Ingalls, and he's been serving since 2019. And he's on the Senate Committee of Agriculture and the Senate Committee on Institutions.
Correct. He chairs agriculture.
Is that mic wireless or does this have to be wired?
No, it's all that mic is for them. It's not here.
Yeah, and I had chair.
Just got a projection here.
Good to see everyone. I can tell you that I'm happy that the season's winding down. It's been a long season. We're still working on a lot of things, trying to get them across the finish line and not be harmful to the state of Vermont. I see North Country Hospitals here. We're working on some healthcare bills that are, and Sam will talk a little bit more about that. We've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to actually do it in 3. So we'll see how that works. But we're working on some healthcare stuff. Again, Sam will touch into that, but I spoke to the governor's office on Wednesday, the governor on Thursday, and his staff again on Friday, and just begging for some help as far as to slow down some of this harmful healthcare initiatives that are harming the rural area, especially our hospital. And so I've asked for a veto just to slow it down. There's just a lot of stuff in there that it's just harmful. It's really, really, really harmful in the context of helping healthcare. And again, we'll have Sam touch on that. Education. They've come to some framework. We have Leanne here. Leanne can spend a lot of time on the education part of it. And again, just trying to get to get to the finish line and getting some product out the door that can be palatable and affordable to the state of Vermont seems to be something that we're really struggling with down there. The budget just has passed with the conferees getting together. On the first round in the Senate, we had 10 no votes. We could have had probably 12 no votes on it, but we were trying to. Some of the people are trying to support the conferees that were in the Senate. I think that they worked really, really hard. But the gist of the matter is that since 2020, as COVID's hit, we are a little over $2 billion more than what we were then. And I understand that costs rise and all of that, but the reason why we're even $2 billion above that was because of all the funding that we got from the ARPAs and the Build Back Better and everything, the infrastructure deals and all of that. That money was supposed to go away, but we've added to the base, and now we are $2 billion more, a little over $2 billion more for the population. Now, it doesn't $2 billion is a lot of money. I mean, when you take 640,000 people and divide it by 2 billion, you've got $3,140 per person, and there's not 640,000 people that are paying taxes, and so you're basically almost $6,500 more per citizen right now than when we first started in 2020. We're spending too much money. We have to get down to the means of where it is. I mean, I think of the retirees, the health cares. As far as everybody in this room, the retirees that are in here, you didn't go up. Your money didn't go up $6,500, no, in no way, shape, or fashion. So it makes it harder to stay here. It makes it harder to live here. So we're still getting down to affordability. I mean, that's really, really what we're doing in the state of Vermont. We're pricing out a lot of our seniors. We're pricing out our hospitals. We're pricing out. I mean. Rich Westman, who was the chair of transportation, got up and passionately spoke about how much trouble that the transportation fund was in. He said, we piecemealed it together this year, but as far as all you residents in the Derby Line area, when you have that road in there, that's just terrible. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible road. It's a terrible road. There's just no money to fix it. And unfortunately, there's more terrible roads elsewhere. We're doing 75 miles, and Ken Wells will touch upon this as well. He's in transportation, but we're doing 75 miles less paving this year than we ever have done. It's the first time that's happened in 11 or 12 years. So it is affordability. That's what we're really, really struggling with, from healthcare to education to just retirees. Overall, we're really struggling with that, and hopefully we're going to get out of there and keep things a little bit more calmer. But we're trying really, really hard, and we have I will tell you this: I've said this for a long, long time. You're very well represented down there. We have a vast array of knowledge in all committees, all across the spectrum, and we do fight hard, and it does make a difference. But I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more to say, and I really appreciate everyone coming here throughout all of this season. It's early in the morning. It's 7:30 in the morning when you get here. It means you got to get up earlier than that. And without you, without the public, without input, we just don't know what's going on unless we hear from you. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ingles. Our next speaker will be Senator Sam Douglas. He's on the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare and the Senate Committee on Institutions.
Healthcare. I think Russ said I was going to say something about that, but I wasn't. So I'm serving on Health and Welfare this year and Senate Institutions. I'll start with that. Senate Institutions. Once we do the capital bill and we get that out the door, Senate Institutions doesn't really do much, which is why they've expanded the scope of that committee with IT this year. So that way we're able to work on IT-related bills, so we're not just sitting on our hands once the capital bill is done. So you'll hear me talk, and my email lists mostly go on about the healthcare side because Institutions doesn't really do much in the later end of the year. So the first bill that I want to talk about, which has been taking up the majority of our time right now, is H91. H91 is an effort to try to rein in the spending that we've been doing on the General Assistance and Emergency Housing Program, better known as the Hotel Motel Program. We're spending an average of $50 million a year on that program. It's a very, very wasteful program. And if we can take some of that spending and use it a little bit more efficiently, which is what this bill attempts to do, we'll be able to allocate that for other things or hopefully just reduce our spending overall. The House version that we got of the bill had a lot of issues with it, and there was a lot of concerns, again, over the cost of that bill itself, over the ability of the community action agencies to take on the projects across the state. We're very fortunate here in the NEK that NECA is wonderful. You're welcome, Jenna. So the bill, what it does is it takes the hotel motel program or Vermont's efforts around homelessness, and it puts it, instead of in the hands of DCF, it puts it in the hands of the community action agencies across the state. There are five community action agencies across the state, including NECA, and they'll be the ones to administer the system for Vermont's approach to homelessness. And it'll be from the state giving grants to those community action agencies and allow them to administer it however they see fit, using a mixture of permanent shelters, congregate shelters, smaller housings, temporary movable housing units, really any way that they're able to do it in a way that really benefits human dignity and in a way that's going to help people get up on their feet and move, as well as connecting them to services. A big problem with the hotel motel program is that there's just so many people. DCF only has so many resources. They only have so many people. So the approach has just been give somebody a hotel room and slap the door closed. And that, obviously, we can all see that that's a big problem. And that's why we've seen so many deaths in the hotel motel program, because there's really no supervision. There's not many check-ins. And just the ability of DCF to manage the program itself has not been the most effective. So with this bill and with the new approach that we're trying, people will be able to get services. People will have case managers, ideally. People will be able to get in contact with mental health services, with substance abuse services, counseling, spousal counseling. So it's definitely a better approach than what we currently have right now. And the final version may or may not entirely eliminate the hotel program. I believe that the hotel program itself as a concept is good. It's the way that we've been using it is bad. It's existed for a long time, and the state used it very sparingly as a last resort when somebody got kicked out of their house for whatever reason, or they're having a marital issue in the middle of winter and one person has to leave the house. It's a last resort to give somebody a hotel room to make sure that they're not going to be on the streets or couch surfing or moving around, especially if they're an older person, because that sort of life is very difficult, mentally and physically. So the big approach to the bill is to just completely reform Vermont's approach to homelessness, while at the same time making sure that we're efficient with our resources and that we're eliminating as much opportunity for fraud or abuses of the system. Because the unfortunate nature of life is that whenever generosity exists, there will always be people that want to take advantage of that generosity. So the way that we're designing the system is to make sure that the people that are going to be in the system we're going to be doing as much verification as we can to ensure that, one, they are Vermonters and they are not coming here from other states, which there is a percentage of that happens, which is very sad. And it's also about making sure that people have those access to services, and if they're able to contribute back into the system, that's one of the things I know myself and DCF am advocating for is a small amount of income contribution as far as they're able to. DCF has traditionally done about 30% of your income if you're able to pay. There's a lot more to it, and I could keep going on, but Russ kept it. I think he said 3 minutes, so I will more or less wrap it up. There's one more bill from Health and Welfare I want to talk about very quickly. That's H482. That's one of the healthcare bills that Russ was talking about. There's two parts to the bill. The first part allowed, actually, I would say there's three parts, actually. I'll repeat that. The first part, what it allowed the Green Mountain Care Board to do is it gives them really, really strong regulatory powers and allows them to completely change the reimbursement rates from a domestic insurer to a hospital if that domestic insurer is facing immediate insolvency, which immediate insolvency is kind of the situation that Blue Cross Blue Shield is already in. One of the conversations that kept happening in my committee was, we're never going to need to use this. We hope we'll never need to use this. This is never going to be used. Don't worry about it. Except they kept going on about how Blue Cross Blue Shield is already in immediate threat of insolvency. So I just felt like, I felt like there was a lot of kind of some untruthfulness coming across the table, and I know that was felt by a lot of the other advocates in the room and a lot of other people in the State House. You're going to shut me up, aren't you?
You couldn't go as quick as Ross.
I'm sorry. How much do I have? 30 seconds? 0. Okay.
because we have a lot of speakers today, we're trying to be prompt, and the next speaker will be Mark Higley, representative, and he's been a representative since 2009 on the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. Welcome, Mark Higley.
Thank you and good morning. I'll try not to take as much time as these senators. We certainly have a lot going on, but I got to clarify that everything that we're talking about really hasn't been finalized. I mean, the Committee of Conferences came out on the budget on Friday, so we haven't really had time to even look at those considerations. All the bills that I'm going to talk about have not been through the process completely, so they could change. I guess I'd like to talk about one in particular in Ways and Means was it is now S51. It wasn't originally, and that's where there was tax credits involved for retirement income, earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and then there was the military pensions that we were looking for. Ever since I've been down there in Montpelier, we've put in a bill to exempt military pensions. And this year is the closest we've come to getting it. It is over in the Senate again. We did get it included. It was a roundabout way. We originally had the tax credit bill without the military exemptions. I voted no in committee just because of that. It came back around. There was an amendment on the floor for whatever reason. The whole bill was pulled back in our committee. And then all of a sudden, S51 came over from the Senate, which was a vehicle to attach the credit bill, all the credits onto that. It's a $13.5 million foregone revenue proposal. But again, it's going to help out so many people, whether it's the earned income tax credit. What we did at the end was we didn't exempt fully adjusted gross income of military retirees. What we did was we exempted 100% up to make folks making $125,000 and then phasing it out to $175,000. With the additional amount, it was originally $3.9 million of foregone revenue in that regard. What we did with the rest of the amount was we had a veterans tax credit, and that's up to $25,000, people that make $25,000 or less, and then it phases out again up to $30,000, and that's a $250 credit. It's the compromise that was proposed through our chair. We definitely feel that it's a good start. Maybe in a couple of years we can ask for the full vote. But again, I'm hoping that that will continue. I've heard rumors that S51 was a tax credit on home care providers as far as individual family members that may take care of a loved one in the house. There were certain conditions. That was a $6 million foregone revenue proposal. So I'm not sure where that's going to come out. The other thing that we've been working on recently is the CHIPS bill. It stands for Community Housing Infrastructure Program. It's similar to the TIF bill in regards to trying to get housing, residential housing, low and moderate income housing going throughout hopefully the more rural communities and have towns be able to apply for some monies to help pay down their bonds for infrastructure, because that's what's holding back a lot of towns when it comes to the ability to build out affordable housing. Again, I've been a little bit concerned. I had a bill in to include current use land. It's 2.57 million acres in our 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 proposal that was passed last year, I believe, last biennium anyway. Concern for me that we're going to tie up so much of our land. This is a way that current use land is, managed land, managed forest and farmland. And I think it's a good mix to meet our goals in regards to that. But anyway, I'll cut it off there, and thanks a lot.
Thank you, Representative Higley. Our next speaker will be Representative Woody Page. He's been serving since 2019, and he's on the House Committee on Healthcare.
As you can see, I didn't get the memo. I'm all dressed up, and my colleagues are dressed down today. So anyhow.
We got tired of watching you dress in flannel all year.
Yeah, okay. Just to add a couple of more things regarding the exclusion of taxes on certain pay. Social Security is one item that's will be excluded to a certain degree, as well as civil servants as well. So I think that's a good thing for helping our older Vermonters, as well as maybe keeping individuals that work for the feds here in Vermont. As was mentioned, I'm on the Healthcare Committee, and we've roughly had about 37 bills that have come before our House Healthcare Committee, and 15 of them have passed to the Senate. Some of these bills I find very controversial, and I'll just go over some of them. Both Sam and Russ have gone over some of them in some degree. And some of them are good, such as H-259. It's an act relating to preventing workplace violence in hospitals. A lot of our hospital staff and doctors and physicians are being assaulted in the hospitals, and we cannot have that. So this establishes a plan for all hospitals to follow and to help protect our hospital workforce. H-266 is an act relating to the 340B prescription drug pricing program. It did pass favorably. It is with an amendment. It does try to keep costs down. Whether or not it will be successful, who knows. H-482, an act relating to the Green Mountain Care Board authority to adjust a hospital's reimbursement rates and to appoint a hospital observer. I find that this is a very bad bill. It gives the Green Mountain Care Board more authority to literally take over, appoint an individual, an overseer, to go in and take over a hospital if they think there's something wrong with it. Why do we have a CEO at a hospital or a board of trustees running our hospitals if we don't trust them in doing the right thing? The bill passed out of our committee, 10-01. I'll admit, I was the one person that was not there. I was away. And if I had been present, I would have voted against it. And I did vote against it on the floor. One other thing, a couple of other bills relating to the Green Mountain Care Board. S-63 is an act relating to modifying the regulatory duties of the Green Mountain Care Board. It passed favorably with an amendment. It was presented on the House floor. There are issues with Rutland and the Green Mountain Care Board. It is in litigation right now. And it basically deals with due process. Rutland Hospital is saying it does not have the proper due process in making appeals before the board. And the Green Mountain Care Board obviously says you have the right to appeal and everything is taken care of through them. That bill passed out of our committee, and I believe it's in the Senate at this point. S-126, an act relating to healthcare payment and delivery system reform. It's now with appropriations. It's being reviewed in appropriations. It passed the House Healthcare 8-3. I was one of the 3 that voted against it. This is a bill that is supposedly going to fix all of our healthcare issues. It also protects Green Mountain Care Board, or not Green Mountain Care Board, but the Blue Cross Blue Shield. Right now, they're $200, some say $300 million in the red. And this is supposed to fix things through price controls for the hospitals. A lot of this bill is directed towards the UVM Medical Center, but it will affect all of our hospitals. Less authority for hospitals, less. It'll give Green Mountain Care Board more authority, basically, and I do not think that's a good thing. A lot of these things are already in statute that the Green Mountain Care Board can do, but we're just putting in legislation now these rules that they can do what they please. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Representative Page. Our next speaker will be Representative Larry Labor. He's been serving since 2022. He's Vice Chair on the House Committee on Environment, Fish, and Wildlife.
A lot of the thunder's already been stolen, so I'll keep mine short. But I'm going to discuss it in a little different environment. I serve on the Environmental Committee. We've done a little exploration this year. We've had 2 site visits to get educated. Third one's coming up tomorrow afternoon. And this is all for the benefit of the members. So we're looking at legislation on pollution, stormwater runoffs, septic spreading, eliminating that. The first one was to the Vanderwert farm in Addison. I'm going to let Representative Richard Nelson talk about that one. I went on the search to the Casella's Recycling Factory in Colchester. That was an interesting, it will disturb your olfactory nerves because this is where they clean it up before it's remarketed as aluminum or whatever. It's also to check on stormwater mitigation to Lake Champlain. I should tell you, Peggy Stevens came down and sat in our committee while A&R was discussing H113. That's your lake in crisis. A&R Secretary Julie Moore talked about it, and it was a good testimony. Various inputs came even after the meeting. Peggy submitted testimony in writing later, and it's under consideration, but A&R is in control, so I'm not sure what's going to become of the bill. Right now, it's on the wall. Woody alluded to the healthcare bill. What he didn't say is that he was the original sponsor of H113. I was just a co-sponsor. But that bill is on the wall. It probably will not be moved because others in the Senate and the House have different varieties of it. There's a lot of healthcare bills out there. But this was just a pathway for survival of small acute care hospitals. It has not been discussed, and it probably will not come up until next session. 124, if you go to your computers, it's S124. I've already been told by a member of the Ag Committee to leave it alone. So when we do a bypass or a pass-through, I should say, of the bill from Leg Council, we probably won't touch it. I should tell you, our freshman representative, Leanne Harple, she took testimony before our committee on the wake boat bills and the usage of them in the smaller Northeast Kingdom lakes. She did a very good presentation, slide deck, etc. A&R, however, is not in favor of letting the purpose of the bill was to bring it over to municipal authority to govern the use of these boats in smaller lakes. I find it very acceptable. However, Leg Council, Michael Grady, explained otherwise, meaning A&R has control by rule. 292, this is an H bill. That's land application of solid biosolids containing PFAS. This bill was introduced by Jim Maslin Friday, along with his other bill, 286. Both of them are meant to direct the state to eliminate the import of anything with PFAS in it. 286. Now, I've already discussed that. There's two exceptions to 286. Firefighting foam is going to contain PFAS, and so is PPEs, protective personal equipment for the firefighters. They have not found a suitable compound yet to replace PFAS in that clothing. Next week, if you want to look forward, I've told you about the past, but if you go forward and you really want to know what's happening with the committees of conference and the scheduling of them, Gwen Zakoff from the Vermont Forest Products Association has put a wonderful section of scheduling that contains all of the committees of conference, which include the transportation bill, capital bills, healthcare, education, environmental bills. You can find that on their website. It is www.vtfpa.org, and you'll find it. If I was to put all of this on here, the hook would have come out an hour ago. But that's pretty much a summary of what's been going on in health and environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Labor. Our next speaker will be Representative Leanne Harple. She serves on the House Committee of Education, and she's a member of the Rural Caucus.
Hasn't been busy at all this year.
No, not at all.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, it has been quite the year to start as a freshman, particularly on the Committee of Education. We have had a lot to deal with right from the beginning. So the big bill that we have been spending most of our time on this year is H454, which is now in the Senate. H454 is a bill that began with Governor Scott's proposal to redistrict our state into 5 districts. That was the end of January, beginning of February. So in the Education Committee, we took a lot of testimony from superintendents, Vermont Principals Association, many other involved organizations, and came up with a proposal to create a study committee that would be made up of retired superintendents and others who by the end of January would give us 3 different proposals to choose from that would probably center our districts between, I would say, 5 and 20, depending on what they came up with, all we were thinking maybe tech centers at the centerpiece of that, as well as geographical and cultural divisions. Another part of H454 was minimum class sizes and minimum school sizes. Minimum school sizes of 400 for elementary, 750 for middle and high school. Minimum class sizes. The governor proposed 25 per class originally. We got that down to 18 in high school, 15 in elementary, or maybe that was, elementary and pre-K. Listening to my community's testimony after all of that, there was really no support for that bill in this community, and particularly because it opened up a pathway to closing our small schools. We received a lot of testimony from students. One of the most exciting days in the Ed Committee was a day that we had set aside just for students to come testify. And we heard from students from Craftsbury Academy, from Lake Region, and from Hazen, and many other schools as well, but those are the closest ones to our area. Our students from Craftsbury testified about all of the amazing opportunities that they get from going to a small rural school. They talked about how Craftsbury has held on for 200 years. In a few years, it's actually about to welcome its 200th freshman class, which is really worth honoring. And through all of that and through the communication of my community, I ended up voting against 454. Of course, it passed anyway. And now it's gone to the Senate. What we have heard is that the Senate has removed all of the minimum class sizes, all of the minimum school sizes, and that's good news. They've also removed sparsity weights, which weights are basically looking at different categories and saying, okay, this category actually takes a little bit more money to teach, and so we're going to give them a little bit more funding. For instance, special ed or non-English language learners. Well, sparsity weights are a weight for a less population of students, which there is still a base amount. This is really all very complicated to explain in 3 minutes, but there is a base amount any school needs. And so to take away that sparsity weight actually does harm those smaller schools. Another thing that they have done in the Senate version of this bill is the House version of the bill made it so that 50% of private schools had to at least be public in order to get public funds, and the Senate has moved that down to 25%. And in out-of-state cases, only one student has to go there for them to receive public funds. This is not good for public schools. This is going to give our public money to private institutions. So there are still some places that the House and the Senate disagree on this bill. And so what's going to happen next is a committee of conference that is made up of some senators and some House members, and they're going to see where they can come to an agreement for a final version that we can vote on. One other piece is that focus group, they removed that it was going to be superintendents and other educators, and they decided that they were going to make it legislators that made that decision. In the House, although it would be nice to have that kind of power in some ways, we actually want it to be educators because educators are the ones who know that landscape. So that's another place of disagreement. So I can't tell you for sure what's going to happen with that bill until that committee of conference takes place. I also need more feedback from my community on whether these changes are acceptable enough to support or whether we want to continue to vote against this bill. That's one of the big bills. The other big bill is H54, which is our cell phone bill. We took a lot of testimony from, I have two huge bills. All right, we're probably going to ban cell phones. There's a lot to say about it, so maybe save that for the question period. We're still talking about watches and other devices, but it will probably be bell to bell. The students who have had devices completely banned from our schools have testified that although they were against it at the time, it's improved their quality of life. Everyone seems to be for this, and I'd be happy to take lots of questions to go over more details. There was also an attempt to remove pre-K funding for private pre-K funding from the Ed Fund and put it in the Department of Family Services. I voted for that. It did fail, but I think it opened up a good conversation about removing non-Ed costs from the Ed Fund and redistributing to other more progressive tax funds.
Thank you, Representative Merrill. Our next speaker is Representative Richard Nelson. He serves on the House Committee of Agriculture, Forestry, and Food Resiliency.
Hey, thank you all for being here. I've been out working this morning. I got a lot of work to do now, so. And I was climbing around my pump. I didn't hear it running. We've got a fair amount done this year, but we got a lot we didn't do. We haven't made great strides for affordability in Vermont. The clean heat standard, we haven't been able to roll back that. Starting next year, North Point, Hayes Ford, all our local dealerships are going to have to carry 35% EV stock on their lots. The current going rate for selling them in the state of Vermont is about 12%. So we're going to about triple that and make them carry it. They don't have to sell them, but they got to carry them on their lot. You figure out their floor plan and how they're going to pay for them. And it's going to be all of us paying more for our cars and trucks. The technology isn't there yet. People aren't ready for it, and people can't afford it. On the Ag Committee, we passed out over to the Senate, and Russ's committee has passed out H-167. That's Vermonters feeding Vermonters, and right now I think it's got $500,000 in it. And that gives money to the food bank so they can buy products from Vermont farms to distribute through the food bank. And they're going to have to start checking the people that are coming through to get food and make sure they truly are deserved. They've lost, they had millions of dollars come over in ARPA money that's no longer there. So they're just giving food away because it's fun to give food away. It's going to end, or it should end. H401 was an act related to exemptions for food manufacturing establishments. And was that in your committee?
Well, I have a story about that.
Yeah. So anyways, that's come through and finally coming out of the Senate. I think they bastardized it some, but it's there so people can produce breads and pies and whatnot in their homes and sell them before and it raised the limit before they had to give a license. Really, it's an Inflation Adjustment Act because it used to be $6,500 and it's been raised now to $10,000 or 30.
30.
30.
But my committee added a lot of bad stuff to that one. That's why I say I have a story.
Yeah. Okay. H484, the foo-foo dust bill. That's come through and that's gone through Russ's committee. That'll be passed out. And that's just the beneficial substances, anything that's not fertilizer and lime or economic poisons. That's what they call herbicide. They'll have a fee paid to the state, and this is something nationally that's just trying to get everyone on the same rules. Act 60, that's the Food Farm Security Special Fund, and this is the agriculture version of BGAP for flooding and whatnot. May get funded, may not get funded, but we made the vehicle there. So if there are some great disasters again in the state, there'll be a place for money to go where farmers can apply for it. S-124, and that came over from Senate Ag Committee, and that's the CAFO bill, the water bill. And for the first time in the history of the state, A&R and agriculture worked together. The EPA has ordered it to be done different. No more memorandum of understanding. And they worked together to craft this bill. And there are a lot of things in it that people in my community, the dairy community, didn't particularly like, but we were told not to fool with it. There are some things in this bill some of the environmental groups don't particularly like. Again, we've been told not to fool with it. It's a compromise. In our required agricultural practices, we're not allowed to pollute. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. This is more looking at the production areas and point source pollution. And I think it's going to go through. It's in Larry's committee right now, and I've told my colleagues over there, don't mess with it. Because frankly, some people in the dairy industry would rather be ruled by the EPA than by the state because the state's rules are stricter. We'll take the stricter rules, but not much stricter. All right, that's just putting it out there. Ken's going to get up and talk in a minute, and he'll probably talk about EV big trucks. They're not going to work. And they've got a bill in there to kick the can down the road 3, 4, 5 years. Let's see if the technology kicks up, and I'm running out of time. And talk to me about the bullfrog endorsement, because I'd love to talk to y'all about what environment did with that bill.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. And next up is Representative Ken Wells.
Thank you, Danny, and thanks for doing this series of events this year. I appreciate it. I'm going to get us back on schedule here because I like to go black and white and just get the facts out and move on. Transportation budget, we got ours out of committee. 11-0, no problem there. There's not a whole lot to argue there. It went to the Senate floor. We don't expect any blemishes. It's going to come back. We're going to do the work we got to do, which is, bridges and railroads and everything else here. We have our usual approximately $900 million. Only thing is things cost more money now. Russell talked about it for a second. If the VTran had it their way, they'd do 300 miles of tarring in this state. And I don't blame them. There's a lot of bad roads out there. They fixed a couple bad ones in our area lately, from Island Pond to New Hampshire border, Willoughby Lake to Charleston. But there's more to be fixed. There's a bad one heading over towards North Troy. I was on it the other day after hearing a few people complain about it. There also was some problem potentially with federal money. We got all of ours. The current administration does not mess with transportation across America. We got all of our money. There's some that are going to get their money later or not get it at all. That's not the case with transportation. We get our cash, and it's just a matter of the price being higher every year. It's about $1 million a mile to tar a road, so we're going to do 125 miles. Like I said, they'd like to do 300. They usually settle for 200. We're going to do 125. That's basically the way it's going to play out. And some of the roads affected around here will be Barton to Hardwick. I don't know the exact schedule. They'll finish I-91 in Derby, and then there'll be tons of miscellaneous routes being taken care of. There's already one from East Montpelier to St. Johnsbury in the final stages going on right now, and they will be in our area before we're done. We don't argue about much in our committee. We do argue about electric vehicles. Electric cars are coming along. If you only have to drive 100 miles a day, if you've got a nice, warm, toasty garage, if you've got a level 2 charger, you're good. If you don't have any of those things, you're only going to be able to drive 125 miles in your rig. They're going to start, or you have the wonderful option of, do I want my heater on or do I want to drive down the road? So there's some real problems there. Now, trucks is a mess. They cost 3 times as much, an 18-wheeler, the cab, $410,000 as opposed to $130,000. The batteries, they weigh what my F-150 does, 5 tons. Imagine that. That's how much a battery weighs. They're forcing them on the American public. How we got in bed with California for this California clean air whole situation, I don't really know. I know California is very alluring with their curvy shoreline and their buxom mountains, but somehow we got tied into them. And they have almost 50 million vehicles registered. I lived in California in the 80s. They had about that then. We got 500,000. So how we matched up with them, the only reason I can see for doing that is adopting the language that we don't have to pay to put together ourselves. I still feel we should have a Vermont standard, not California.
Global Warming Solutions Act. That's how we got into it.
I don't like it anyway. So that's about the only thing we argue about. The trucks are not ready for prime time. We want to get 5 years. Maryland's already done that. Massachusetts has already gone 2 years. I spoke with the governor a week ago Thursday. I said, what do I tell my car dealers around here? And as we all know, there's hundreds here. There's 54 heavy-duty truck dealers and 174 like the size of North Point and up here in Derby. And then there's hundreds of mom and pop ones along the way. That will be a political issue in next year's election because you're affecting so many people. We've pushed for 5. Governor tells me to tell people we're going to get 2. They're going to squash us down, but that gives us 2 years for the technology to mature and get better. American technology is fantastic. It's still the best in the world, no matter what you read. And eventually they will solve these problems. But it's not here now. So we have to be reasonable and use a little common sense and delay it until the technology, like I said, matures and is up to the level that Americans use it. And you got to remember, too, they're straining hard to get up to 15% for EV sales in Vermont, in America. California is the only state that's over them. And they're almost forgetting about the 85% that still have combustible engines. And on the horizon, we've still got new technology coming up with hydrogen engines, which could, if electric cars in 5 years are reeling and they're on the ropes, the hydrogen engine could KO them. So we'll see how it plays out. And I'm going to get us back on a time. That's it.
So now we open up the floors to questions, and I see someone's already come up. So please state your name and where you live, and address your questions to all or none or one. Or
Yeah, Chris Roy from the town of Coventry. I was one of the state employees, newly hired state employees last fall, who was laid off during the federal cuts, and I'm just wondering how that is going to affect the state unemployment fund. I mean, obviously, the state and even unemployment doesn't it's not a full salary, and calling the unemployment office to file is no fun in itself. You get put on. I was on hold for 2.5 hours, and I just got cut off. And I'd just like to have the thoughts of these folks if they have any thoughts.
thank you, Chris. The first will be Senator Russ Ingalls.
I didn't understand the question, Chris.
No, I'm just wondering how the federal cuts, because I was working for the state, but I was funded by the federal.
I don't think you were cut from the federal state. I think you were having a hard time with your employer because you guys weren't getting along very well. So I want to make sure we have the premise of the question, because you asked me a lot of it about how it is. So I don't think you lost your job because of federal cuts. I think you lost your job because of some problems that you and your employer
No,
were
my
having.
employee had no problems with us.
Well, I think this is kind of a personal
Right.
matter, so we'll
Right.
take it.
I'll talk to you
We'll
offline about
talk
it.
after. But the second part of his question was federal funding for the unemployment system. Has that been an issue? Okay. Did anyone want to answer that at all?
I'll just say that having been unemployed at one time, it's not easy, doing the paperwork and filing for unemployment. It just isn't easy, whether you're doing it on the computer or whether you're doing it on the telephone. And many times it's difficult to get a hold of somebody. It's not an easy process.
Yeah. So,
Can we have, I want Jerry's question answered. She wasn't going to ask it today because she's asked it a lot. And Leanne touched upon it and Sam was going to touch upon it. And that's the cell phone bill. So Jerry, can we ask that question on your behalf and get some, can we add a little bit of that for you? About the cell phone bill, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
H54S21.
so Jerry Cahill is asking about the cell phone bill in the schools. So, and we'd start with,
I'm going to give
We
my
defer.
comment. I know
Okay.
that Leanne
So-
and Sam have no more about it.
Is the question provide more details?
No, I understand the bill.
Okay.
It's just, what can you folks do to push it along?
Okay, so I was really promoting the idea that we could have it ready for this upcoming school year. However, it looks like that's not going to happen. One of the reasons that I was given that I think is probably the most legitimate reason is that school boards still need to meet to develop those policies. And because we're so far into the school year, it's unlikely that we're going to be able to get those school boards to meet over the summer to do the final details. I don't know if I totally believe that that's not possible, but that is what is being said. But it is pretty definite that we are going to have these new cell phone rules in place by the opening day of not this upcoming end of summer vacation, but the one that comes after that, if that makes sense. So that would be 2026. What we can do is we need to really define a few terms. For instance, personal electronic devices. One of the details that's getting hung up is, do we still want kids to have the smartwatches? I guess everyone but me has a smartwatch now, which essentially functions as a text and phone. And so that kind of would defeat the purpose of the bill if we allow that. Another thing is, what is the definition of social media and when can it and can't be used? As a teacher, I was explaining that there were many times we actually do use social media in class. And so to eliminate everything that would allow kids to talk to other kids online or share and comment on their work might be anti-educational. There are good reasons for that. So kind of getting at, what do we really want to ban and when do we want to ban it? And also, how do schools communicate with families? What kind of platforms can they use? Because not all families have social media. And also sort of like, should coaches be allowed to text students? So all of that kind of are definitions that need to be worked out. The other thing is whether or not this is an unfunded mandate. We have been told repeatedly, and this is totally valid, that we cannot be putting into law any more unfunded mandates. Well, With the cell phone bill, there are these things called yonder pouches that are about $20,000 a school, and kids have magnets. And at the end of the day, they go, and I don't know exactly how they work, but they somehow unlock them with their magnets. However, this is Vermont. We could also take manila envelopes. We could take boxes. We could take those shoe things that hang on hangers, so it doesn't need to be yonder pouches. And so we're trying to figure out all those details.
But I think the bill states that every school district comes up with their own policy.
So yeah, the AOE is going to create a model policy, and that school boards need to adopt a policy that is as rigorous as the model policy, or if they fail to do so, then it will be assumed that they're just adopting the model policy. And so that is what is kind of putting it off for not this year, is to give school boards time to do that. So those are all the details I have, and those are the reasons for the date that we're suggesting. They were suggesting January 1st as the date. So like if school boards could meet over the fall, we would implement the cell phone rule in January 1st. But I and a number of other teachers pointed out that it would just be torturing teachers to make them change the cell phone bill halfway through the year. And we don't want to do that.
Sam's got something to say.
Senator Douglas?
Yeah, so that bill in the Senate was, I was a co-sponsor of it. It was originally in the Education Committee like it is over with Leanne in the House, and it was passed over to my committee because the Education Committee in the Senate was busy working on education this year. I've heard it's a big topic this year, I think. Yeah. So our committee was supposed to take it up. That's why it was sent over to us, and it never got taken up. And then crossover happened, and we were again told we were going to take it up after crossover, take some testimony on it. Like Leanne has been getting testimony on it, especially from a healthcare perspective, which I'll talk about in like 2 seconds. And that has not happened. We have not taken any testimony. It has not been taken off the wall. Myself and other members of my committee have been asking why that is not happening after we were told that that was going to happen. And I would like to see that happen. So I'm going to keep pushing on that. From a mental health perspective, phones are just absolutely terrible. Devices, digital addictions are a really big problem, especially among younger generations. And frankly, older generations too also struggle with it. But when you have that ingrained in a young person from an early age, that behavior just continues into adulthood, and it gets even worse over the lifetime. So from a mental health perspective, like this is one thing that we could do that I think would be very effective and helpful for our kids. And Leanne, the little bags you're talking about, I happened to see a video about that actually the other day, and didn't know what it was. But yeah, kids will line up and there'll be a magnet on the wall somewhere, and the little pouches, they put it against the magnet and it opens up.
They're not necessary.
Yeah.
Also, I think
we can do it a lot cheaper. We don't need those fancy bags.
the Senate is we're gonna hopefully get it out this week, and the Senate will tack it onto the miscellaneous ed bill this session. That's the rumor I'm hearing.
Oh, you can tack things. I got some
Just a minute while I'm on my phone here. Anyway, does anyone want to speak or add to that at all? Okay. We'll open the floor for probably one more question. And please name and state and a couple sentences groundwork and then to the question.
Sure, got it. Ed Nilsson from Derby Line. So my concern as a retiree, and there's a lot of retirees, of course, in the room, are about the property taxes here in Vermont and the tax base. So I understand there's been kind of a buy down on property taxes this year, but what I'm concerned about is a long-term solution for property tax relief in Vermont. And I retired from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, agency within USDA. So I'm also concerned, as Woody talked about, for some relief on being taxed in Vermont for my federal pension.
We'll begin with Senator Ingalls. Thank you for the question.
Excellent question. I think you can hear all throughout every conversation that all of my colleagues have had. It's about affordability. Everybody's trying to do it. And there's just this big, it's frustrating. There's just this big thing to keep that from happening. It's for whatever reason, Social Security, they just believe that they need the money more than grandma. I mean, it's just all the way through. $77 million going by to buy down the education. We're going to have $150 million next year if we don't come up with something to buy down education. It's like rent. That's all it is. You're just buying it down. This year, that $77 million is going to buy it down. So I think your property tax, I think the yield bill come out in the Senate was like 1.1% increase in finance. as far as on your taxes. As far as that, I've said it before. I don't care what we pay for education. I want two things. I want to have some predictableness about what your property taxes are going to be. We will figure out the overall dollar amount. We'll figure it out and we'll do that. But what you can't have is you can't have the 20, 30% increases every year. You know, 2 or 3%, just like what it is we need to have. But and we're just working really hard as far as on all the other stuff, as far as no taxes on military retirements, no taxes on Social Security. And there's just a battle. And how that gets done is that you folks need to be involved and send the letters to everyone, even if you like them. Send letters saying what is going on. That's the only way it gets done.
Senator Douglas.
I really don't have much to add to what Senator Ingalls just said. The property tax issue is one of the biggest issues we have, and that's connected to the education issue. And I know that the governor does not want to send us home this year unless we do something to address that. As I've been made aware, the Senate version of the Ed bill has a bunch of things to try to reduce the education costs for property taxes. And Senator Ingalls was correct. It is a 1.1% average increase this year for the yield bill. So that's a lot more manageable than I think it was like the 12 to 14% that we had last year. So I'm hoping that the Ed bill that we have this year will do some of that, and I hope that we won't leave Montpelier to the chagrin of my colleagues until we have that addressed, because we just have to. We can't keep buying it down, and we can't keep putting it on the backs of property tax owners. You know, it's people that are on pensions or that are on fixed incomes, they can't handle it. You know, I'm in the position where I currently rent, partially because we can't find a place and we can't afford a place. And I don't know if we were able to, what the property tax would be for us. So, you know, it affects everybody. It affects renters, and we need to get them down. So I hope we don't leave until we do something, because we're just gonna keep kicking it down the road until we get it done. So,
Representative Higley.
Just so you know, Ways and Means, he's one of those money guys. He controls how it goes out and who we screw it out.
Again, I don't have a lot to add. I think that's why the governor is adamant about the timeline for the foundation formula. When it came out of the House, it extended it a year or more. He needs that to, and it's going to take a while to stabilize that education spending. And I guess on another note that this doesn't necessarily have to do with property taxes, but you know, we've got a lot in the works in regards to affordable housing. And to me, we've been our own worst enemy over the years. We've had our new residential building energy standards and commercial building energy standards that went into place in July. I sat on LCAR. Last year, we talked with contractors and architects and all that, said that those weren't really ready for prime time. I tried to get a bill to postpone action on those for a couple of years. That didn't work out, but LCAR got them to postpone until July. But already there's, I had a contractor, actually a investor in Stowe, talk about there's provisions in that, the commercial energy standards, that a certain amount of rental properties have to have all the underground infrastructure in for EVs except for the EV charger. That's just one example. And so much of that is in regards to, in my mind, what's affecting this affordable housing. And so here we try on one end to create all these programs that are going to build so-called affordable housing. And it's just a tough concept when I think we shoot ourselves in the foot, whether it's, you know, in last year's Act 250 bill, there was 3 tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 3 was ecological sensitive areas that were going to, you know, restrict any growth whatsoever. The CHIPS bill that I talked about a little bit, is right now only going to be implemented in tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 A and B. So that's not tier 2, which is everything else in Vermont, all our rural areas. So again, I'm worried about the bigger cities taking up that money for their developments when some of the smaller towns and communities, whether it's Hyde Park, Johnson, all these places that need that infrastructure before they can build out. So it's a concern for me in regards to just the affordable housing end of things. And like I said, I think we've been our own worst enemy when it comes to not understanding. I mean, general contractors having to register. Well, I'm a general contractor. I registered this year. In registration, they had a dozen or more lists of what you perform for your work. And I filled out every single one of them because I think eventually they're going to have a proposal for certification for all of these things. That's going to cost people, the contractors, money to even do it. They're also talking about in the Energy Committee a statewide residential building code with enforcement through fire and safety right now. I've talked to Mike DeRoshi. He has some real concerns about it, but that's just another example of, here we are trying to create affordable. I mean, I even had the Secretary of State tell me one time, well, Mark, we can't just have people living with a roof over their heads. Really? I mean, tell that to the homeless. I mean, so to me, it's just a concern for me to cut back a little bit and make it a little bit more realistic.
Representative Page.
Ed, I'll share further details on the civil service retirement, but basically if you're filing jointly, if you're making less than $70,000, the first $10,000 of income received from the civil service retirement system shall be excluded. If you're making over $80,000, you can forget anything. You won't get anything. And if you're making between 70 and 80,000, there's a formula that you have to follow. And can I say something else as well? It has to do with healthcare. As you know, the Owen Wyman report came out last year. Our legislators are following that report very closely. And there has been a great deal of support for our hospital here at North Country and as well as St. Johnsbury and all of our rural hospitals. And I would just advise everyone not to let down your guard in protecting our hospitals. They are so important to our community. And there is an emphasis to cut costs in our hospitals. And after a while, if you start cutting services, when is a hospital not a hospital? And that's the issue that we're dealing with. So be very conscious of it and support our hospitals. It's so important for our communities.
Representative Labor, would you like to add anything?
Mark Higley talked about Tier 1 and Tier 3. Tier 1 has two sections, A and B. If you have a village center designation, then you can qualify for extra funding. Tier 2 is what I call the discrimination against rural Vermont. And the Tier 2 sites are the ones without municipal water and sewage. So you have to have the land available, and they'll tell you, oh, you got soil. Well, soil where? In some farmer's field? Is there rural transportation there? Probably not. Is there NEK broadband there? Heavens no. We don't even have it in Morgan and Holland. I mean, there's a lot of, Act 250, they loosened up. So they put it as LURB, Land Use Review Board. Well, isn't that nice? So it's another category. Is it going to assist the unhoused in rural areas? Probably not. That's all I got to say about that. Now, hospitals. Sit yourself down. Hospitals in a small rural area. We don't have all the specialists. But could we have? Years ago, I know of a cardiologist that drove to North Country from Dartmouth for 17 years, twice a week. Maybe some thought ought to be given to the tertiaries, and I say tertiaries with an S. We've got the Monmouth Hospital in Burlington. That's a wonderful place. But $600 million a year in healthcare revenues is going to Dartmouth Hitchcock from Vermont zip codes. Maybe that should be looked at. Maybe the UVM Medical Center network ought to be looked at. Testimony has been given that they are subsidizing the losses of certain New York hospitals. To me, that's Governor Hochul's problem. It shouldn't be Vermont's problem. We should support our own. Thank you.
Representative Harpel. And we're getting very close on time, so.
I'll be quick then. I don't have a lot to add to the very intelligent people that have already given you information. But what I can say is that what I started to touch on at the end of my first go around was that there are some attempts now to start removing some things from the ed fund, which is property taxes, that could be better paid for other places that are not necessarily education related in the sense of direct instruction or materials, such as the private pre-K. While that did fail, I think that part of the reason that it failed was because the organizations that would get shifted to were not sure yet that they were ready to accept that cost burden, and that a lot of people didn't want to jump into any unintended consequences by doing it too fast, but generally agreed that it was a good idea. Universal meals, which is another thing that we actually ended up getting back into the ed fund, thankfully, or back into, the ed bill, thankfully, is something that could get shifted from the ed fund. And so we're talking about some other places, mental health services that are now being delivered at schools because that's where kids are. If we could shift these, that would relieve some of the property burden. The fact is there's not a lot to take from ed. There's not a lot to cut from ed. We're in a teacher crisis right now. Taking away salaries or healthcare isn't a realistic idea. Changing the way we pay for healthcare, which is a national and a statewide conversation, would do that. But there are no places to take away from kids right now. So,
Representative Nelson.
If y'all watched the news this weekend, they had that great debate over in Chittenden County on the ed fund, the education portion and our taxes. And I can't remember the reporter's name, but she said that they're going to have base funding of $1,300 per student. And they aired it 3 times. It's $13,000 per student. It's not $1,300. $1,300 is laughable. You can't do anything for $1,300 per student. Now, North Country Union High School, $27,500 per student. Per student, without any weights, without anything added, $27,500. Statewide average, $30,300. We're and believe me, you can ask our superintendent. I blew a gasket at $27,500. I blew a gasket. We are 10% less than just about, the average. There's not a lot less than us. Who is spending 10% more than the average? These are the things we need to look at, and we do have to look at them. Teacher salaries go up. People will point a finger at that. Well, most everyone else's salaries go up. I'm a farmer. We just getting the shit kicked out of us. But, everyone else's salaries go up. The problems are demographics, and it gets back to housing. And housing and more people and more students. North Country used to be 1,200 students. Right now it's 710. put the students back in the building. You get more people here. It helps with the education. It helps with our health care because now you have young, healthy people paying health insurance and they're not using it. And that helps all us gray hairs, and it helps Tom Franks and North Country Hospital and everybody else. So it's a complicated situation, but yes, we need to work on education reform, but we need to work on housing reform and get the numbers back here in our communities. And yes, write letters to Larry's Committee on Environment, because I'll tell you, they want to turn us into a park. They really do. And if they turn us into a park and then they defund the park service, it's just going to be land with nothing going on. Thank you.
And with the last word.
I'm all set. Everything's
Okay. Well, no last word. So I'd like to thank you all for attending today and all season in Legislative Breakfast. And an applause for our representatives here who are showing us democracy in action, and you all helping with that by participating. Again, our sponsor today was Spates Family LLC, so we'd like to thank them.
So we can do whatever we want now the rest of the session. You're not going to haul us back in here to stand up for what we did.
No, because we didn't think you were going to take this long to do all this work. So we hadn't planned for it, but I also want to thank the Eastside for the lovely food. I would like to thank the members of the media and especially NEK-TV for putting this on every year. Todd and Terry, they've been amazing. And so there is kind of an announcement with the stuff that's been going on in the chamber. We are looking at expanding this to an educational series in the fall and be topic specific and have any representatives interested in those topics to attend. It's still in the planning phases, so anyone with any questions, thoughts, ideas, or participation, please contact me. And again, thank you all, and this concludes the season, so now I can sleep late on Mondays.
We'd like to thank Dan Pellerin as well.
Thank you for making it happen.